have a great HOA and Karen video for you today. Here's our first story. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. Karen demands I move 2 cars impounded by the police and meets Mr. Sparky. This story is from roughly 2013. I was an adjuster for Lizard Insurance and would go to many tow lots after car accidents and decide if a car was a total loss or send it to a body shop, as well as do the initial write-up of an estimate on repair cost. The tow lot that I was at this day also worked with the state police and housed their overflow storage for anything deemed evidence and on hold from release. These vehicles were kept behind a locked gate inside the already fenced gated tow yard. I was there to do an appraisal on 2 vehicles that had been involved in a minor accident. However, both were left unable to drive from the scene due to either multiple flats, lights knocked out, or windows busted. I finished the first vehicle and I started taking photos of the second vehicle. I have headphones in and I'm listening to the album Cavalcade by the Flatliners. Seriously, check them out. Anywho, I see a woman that I guess around 50 walk up to the police evidence lot and the gate swings open out of the corner of my eye. Not paying much attention as the vehicles I was working with were on the same side of the lot but about 50 meters down from the evidence lot. As my back is turned to this woman, I will hereon refer to as Karen. I take the last couple of photos that I need, the last being a photograph of the VIN of the vehicle, which is located where the windshield meets the hood, almost on the dash through the windscreen. Hope that makes sense. Karen, out of literally nowhere, grabs both cables to my headphones from behind and rips them out of my ears. Excuse me, why are there 2 cars in front of mine so I cannot get it out? This lot would stack cars in 4 or 5 deep side by side and move them around with a small truck to release them. I reply, hey, please don't touch me, and I don't think you should be in there, and you shouldn't be listening to music on the job anyway, or slacking off, taking pictures of other people's belongings. You're probably back here stealing. I attempt to point at the Lizard Insurance logo on my blue jacket, but Karen continues on. Are you going to do your job, or do I need to call the police because you're refusing to give me my property? Have you went to the office at ABC Towing? No, I saw you here, and you need to move these cars so I can get mine and leave. As Karen opens the door and gets into the first car and the ones blocking her, I say, hey, no, you can't go in there. That's police evidence. I use my cell phone to call ABC Towing, and I inform them, and Karen says, if you don't move these cars, then I will. Where are my freaking keys? I reply, in the office with the employees. At this time, the manager comes running out with one of those weird smartphone and Nextel style phones in his hand. He says, hey lady, get the heck out of here. Those cars are property of the state police. He frantically uses his Nextel to talk to someone. He sees the chain used to keep the lock closed has been cut with bolt cutters, y'all. Karen was carrying a pair of bolt cutters and had thrown them into her car when she was back at it. The manager and Karen argue back and forth, and I intently listen and half pay attention as I finish my duties for work. About 8 to 10 minutes pass, and 7 police cars come flying back into the lot. The manager greets the police and explains what's going on, but not after Karen attempts to scream at the police that I'd stolen her car. The police tell Karen to stand over in a direction that he points, sending one officer to wait with her. Turns out the lieutenant was on the scene who was in charge of the county's police tow licenses. After getting the manager's story, Lieutenant comes to me and takes mine. While I'm informing him of what happens, Karen overhears and starts yelling and attempting to approach me. The officer standing with her grabbed her by her arm. Karen yanked that arm out of the female officer's hand and shoved her, surprisingly knocking the officer down. Karen is screaming incoherently as she charges toward me. The lieutenant steps in front of me and with his taser hits Karen with the most beautiful sound in the world. Karen goes limp and face plants in the dirt and light gravel of the lot and skids slightly. They immediately handcuff her. Turns out, Karen had walked onto the lot carrying the bolt cutters while I was in the office talking with the staff about the 2 cars that I needed to adjust. She had been roaming the lot until she saw me and I happened to be near her car. Karen was charged with burglary, 2 counts of tampering with evidence, assault on a police officer, assault on me, trespassing, and resisting arrest. I know Karen did jail time, but I'm not sure how much. Years later, the tow company I now own impounded her car for being double parked, and she remembered who I was and quietly paid. Oh, Karen screwed around and found out. I mean, how are you going to make assumptions of people like this and then just have your butt handed to you and fight off officers? I'm not going to do that if I'm Karen, right? I'm not going to be a Karen. What have you done? This HOA story has an update. HOA threatening fines if I'm not home every day from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. I'm a resident in a condo building in Southern California. The HOA hired a plumbing company to repipe the whole building, which involves some invasive work in individual units. The HOA has a property management company that manages building maintenance and projects. So far, the plumbing project has been a disaster. The plumbers are not competent enough to coordinate with the residents to gain entry. They flooded one apartment and so on. The intermittent, random, without warning, water shutoffs all day have been more than inconvenient. I personally have an 18-month-old who spends all day at home with my wife and myself. I work from home. The plumbers mandated a specific day to come into our unit. They missed that day, Tuesday, and no one told us why, and we had made preparations to be out of the apartment from 8 to 4, which is no easy feat with a 1.5-year-old and no place else to go. I asked the plumbers on several occasions to give us warning at least the day before so that we can prepare our place with plastic and have a plan for our toddler. They are vile, rude, and don't give a crap, so they just ignore us completely. So, come today, Friday, they knock on the door while everyone is asleep and no one hears it. I wake up to an email saying that we denied them entry and each day of delay will result in a $2,000 fine. I emailed the property management rep and I said that I had no idea that anyone knocked, and of course, we need some warning when they need to be in our unit. The rep maliciously complied and said that they'll be there Monday and they need access from 8 to 4 every day for the rest of the project, which has no set end date. This is why I'm writing. This is not reasonable and I can imagine it may be illegal. They won't need to get into our place every day. From what I understand, maybe Monday, once for the city inspection and one for the drywall repair. Of course, we all want that done and are happy to oblige, but we can't live for a month with a go bag waiting for a knock on the door at 8 a.m. for them to do loud, dirty, invasive work while we normally be eating breakfast. Update. Condo board members slipped a note under my door with the same threatening language, which included a bit about getting a locksmith to open the door if we don't let them in, which has never been the case nor insinuated by us. I marched down to the condo president's unit and asked nicely as I could, "What the heck is this?" I reiterated everything that I shared here, having a kid, the dumb threatening language, the absurdity of the demands. He said, "It's fine, I can ignore the note," which made me angrier that I got in the first place then. I gave him my cell phone number and said, "Anytime you need to come in, you can call me in advance," and he sheepishly agreed. No, I understand having a time that you need to expect the person to be there, but they're taking advantage, and $2,000 a day fine is completely overstepping their bounds. How would you handle this stupid HOA? What happens when you give the HOA warnings they disregard and it's time to show them what you're made of? Sit down and let me tell you a tale of a crappy HOA. My husband and I purchased a condo in June of 2021. It was a downsize, but it was gorgeous. We used our extra funds from the sale of our last home to splurge on some nice things like a TV, nice couches, and a purple mattress. That bed was like sleeping on a cloud, and it was amazing. I got curious shortly after and start researching my HOA online, and I come across their Facebook page and the reviews. They have like a 2-star rating, so I was looking for tea or drama. One review catches my eye. It was a seller who we purchased from complaining about a roof leak and mold issues posted in 2018 and saying that the leak was an issue since 2013. Well, crap. I just hoped it was fixed, but was willing to let it slide, even though Florida requires those things to be disclosed, and they weren't. Whatever. I screenshot the post just in case issues popped up later, and she deleted it. Fast forward to the end of 2021. As my husband and I are sleeping, I wake up because there is a wet spot on the blanket. I then notice a drop of water fall from the ceiling. I was ticked. I fell asleep again. This happens maybe a week later, so I call the HOA and leave a message. Didn't get a response. Months go by. It's now March, so I call again and I actually get someone that I could speak with. I tell her about the issue, She claims that she's going to open a work order. Cool, because this is now turning into a small bubble in my ceiling. A month goes by and I realize that the complaint from the previous owner about their failure to fix the issue is what I also was going to be facing. So I decide to email them to allow a paper trail. I sent an email inquiring about the issue in April of 2022. Rinse and repeat for months. I'm either told every time that a work order is open and never hear anything, or I don't hear back from them at all. Somewhere around May or June of 2022, the leak becomes so bad we can no longer sleep in our bed. My husband and I start sleeping on our couches. Weeks later, we decide to buy a queen mattress and stuff it into our daughter's room. And there we have been all this time. 2 different times roofers have knocked on my front door without notice to patch my ceiling. Both times they were asked if the outside was fixed, and both times I was told yes. Both times the leak started up again through the patch. Every time it rains, my ceiling still leaks all over a $3,000 bed that I cannot use, and the moisture has ruined all of my books that are next to my bed now. I tried legal aid, but they don't handle my kind of case. They referred me to the Florida bar, who were very happy to take my $50 and never get in touch. Real estate lawyers wanted anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 up front. We are low income, we can't afford this. And to add insult to injury, the HOA also decided to raise dues in January of this year, without notice, from $254 a month to $381 a month. And for the second time since the leak has started, they've also decided to charge special assessments to replace roofs in the complex. But guess what? None of them are my building's roof. My last resort was going to be contacting the HOA's liability insurance to start a claim, but I decided to try one more lawyer. He called me today, and he specializes in suing HOAs, and he works on contingency. I'll no longer be trying to scare this HOA into action by threatening to sue. I just signed the papers to actually do it. Wish me luck, because I'm entirely done with this situation. Why aren't you going after the previous owner for not disclosing the roofing issues? Well, I haven't found a lawyer that will handle that yet. My primary issue was getting my roof fixed because we have pets and a child and I'm worried about mold. But now that I have a lawyer, I'll be looking into that. If I can't find one who doesn't ask for an arm and a leg up front, I'll probably take some of the money from this case and use it to hire one after. What would you do if this happened to you in this brand new story? Let me know. Frustrated with HOA and the neighbor who is president of my community. First off, I have cancer and literally the only one at home with my wife, as my parents are pretty much working and at the church every day. We live with them and cause no problems for anyone in our neighborhood as we moved into our condo last April. We rent and paid a year's rent up front just because of my situation, and also my mom is on disability. Also, my sister-in-law passed away at the same time and we had to move that same week. Thought it would be less of a pain. So we have 3 cars and a 2-car garage. Literally, the first 2 days of moving in, we get a complaint that the garage is not being used for 2 cars. But we were literally still moving stuff in. So we cleared that up, and we start getting more complaints like there's only 1 car in the garage and the other 2 cars are parked on the street. Turns out, our neighbor is president of the community and is watching our every move. When we moved in, he had a family friend help us, and he had an old beat-up pickup truck. That first week, we got a complaint about him and his truck. He was literally just parked on the street and popped the hood of his truck to check a few things. From that day, my mom got a gut feeling that our neighbors were racist because we looked poor and Mexican. By the way, we are not poor and live in a nice area. Pretty much OCD about how clean we keep our home. To this day, we had to send in 5 pictures of our garage because it kept being requested as 2 cars were not being used up in the garage. The landlord did not attend the HOA community weekly meeting or whatever and is now being fined $400 for our garage. Our garage, at the moment, still has 1 car and 1 open space. But this is where it gets messed up. We live in a gated community, and all of a sudden, our transponders were not accessing the crane at the gate, and we were not allowed into the community until speaking with security. Now they have temporarily reactivated our transponders for the time being, and we cannot speak on behalf of our home, only the landlord can. We literally see the president, who is a housewife at home all the time, looking through her window every time we come home or open the garage. It is very frustrating. My mom is now emotionally distressed and is looking into lawyers to possibly sue the HOA and or the landlord for discrimination, emotional distress, and other things. The president/neighbor literally had a party for their daughter the other week, and it was on their driveway with their garage open. That doesn't seem like it's being used for car purposes only. It just sucks that the association does not hear our side of the story and just keeps requesting picture after picture of the garage when they keep approving that it's fine. Now, there's a $400 fee for whatever freaking reason out of nowhere, and our landlord is hinting that we need to pay for that. There's a lot more to the story, as even the first day we moved in, the realtor came to our place at 9 p.m. abruptly, asking for the garage space to be cleared ASAP and that all the trash bins cannot be placed in the backyard and only in the garage. Bro, it's 9 p.m. Call or text us in the morning. I'm just so sick of the neighbor causing so much stress on my family without even coming to our door just to chat. My wife went over to their place and spoke with her husband, and he just came up with some bullcrap excuse that another neighbor was complaining and they had to let the association know. We live right next door. At least warn us about it. What would you do? My mom wants us to fight for some of our rent back and move out, trying to figure out this stress while navigating through chemotherapy. Do you agree with this answer? You rent, so no, the HOA has no responsibility to tell you anything. They don't have an agreement with you. They have an agreement with the landlord. Anything they tell you is a courtesy. Super sucks to rent in an HOA community for not getting good communication. I feel ya. Nobody's harassing you. The HOA may be harassing your landlord, but there's no way for you to know as you're not privy to their history or communication with the HOA. In addition, there's no need to throw out the race card when it's much more likely the president dislikes you for simply being a renter who's breaking community rules and lowering property values. You need to work this out with your landlord. So we're at a crossroads here. Is OP being picked on by these neighbors and HOA president, or do they actually have a point? Let me know what you think. Rogue board member taking legal action without board approval. Check out this video in podcast form by searching Austin Stories wherever you listen, or check the video description for a link. 4 HOA units, 4 board members. Takes 3 to get a majority vote, right? Not according to Karen. We have 1 unit behind on dues. They owe $5,500, but the HOA has not really suffered for it. There was a tight spot with an insurance payment last summer, but the unit in default made a sizable payment when it was discussed, via group text by Karen, and we currently have a nice cushion. Everyone has access to monthly bank statements, and Karen in Unit D likes to group text about the delinquent unit, Unit A, after the statement comes out each month. She has also taken on the role of debt collector and has sent a certified letter to the unit threatening legal action, all without the HOA board, of which she is 25%, having any involvement. I'm technically in charge of the HOA, meaning mail comes to me and I make sure that the bills get paid. But we vote on all decisions. I, Unit B, am in frequent communication with Unit A. Unit C doesn't show up for meetings or join in group text. Karen likes to stretch the truth and exaggerate. So, last group text minus Unit A, that was all her as usual, was her saying that she has been asking for info on when they will catch up for 18 months. False, only 7 months. That they won't schedule a meeting with her in violation of bylaws. False, we met at her insistence 7 months ago, and they won't respond to her even though she sent the certified letter. She says that she doesn't know what to do other than pursue legal action. So, Unit C says, I agree. First peep in months. I say we should meet with them first. She says they just ignore her so we can't meet, and then proceeds to send a demand text to group text threatening legal action if they don't respond in 3 days' time. Before you say, why is this in text? She has been asked to stop many times. Unit A will only respond through email, though I sometimes cave and send a text back. It's almost all from Karen with no responses. 3 days go by and she gets an email back refuting her claims and reminding her the HOA has to vote. She says, "I already started legal action this morning, and what's not true about what I said?" And then she sends that to the group text, to which I say, "Hey, for the record, I am not on board with legal action." Ever since, radio silence. Now this HOA has very, very old governing documents. Built in 1905, shared water, heat, and garbage with 4 townhomes. Old beautiful brick building. What can I do about this Karen, and what legal action could she have taken? I mean, I think this Karen is just power hungry, right? She controls how everything is being said, just changes it to make it fit her narrative, and she's never the bad guy, right? How would you handle her? HOA levies fines even though I'm not part of the HOA, with updates. My parents had an existing fence on their property that was falling apart. They tore the old fence and built a new one without a building permit. A couple of months later, they receive a notice from the HOA stating that they are in violation of the governing document because they had the fencing installed without filing a building permit with the Osceola County or notifying the Architectural Control Committee as per the deed restrictions requirement. My parents are not part of the HOA. The notice also includes the following statement. Additionally, our records indicate that you are not a member of the Homeowners Association. We highly suggest that you complete the enclosed application and submit this with the annual dues of this amount. They were invited to attend an HOA meeting to contest these fines. However, they were unable to attend due to an emergency. Since they did not attend the meeting, the HOA levied a $1,500 fine and planned to file a property lien against their home. My parents tried to get more information, but the number provided does not return their calls. At the moment, I'm trying to pull deed records from the county to determine if there are any deed restrictions. I plan to help the folks to contact the HOA representatives if they do another meeting regarding the fine. So can the HOA impose fines if my parents are not part of the HOA, or is it dependent on what the deed restriction says? It just appears counterintuitive to not be part of the HOA, yet they still have to receive approval for a fence regardless of deed restrictions. We're hoping to remove the fine. So I've received some clarifying information from the folks. The HOA has yet to put a lien on the property and they only threatened it. Update time. I found the deed. However, it is 1 page. I'm not sure if this is typical for HUD purchased property. There is some language that concerns me regarding restrictions, which I comment below. I found the record plat and saw no mention of an HOA. Nonetheless, I told my parents to call the title company for more details. Unfortunately, I found the restrictions document and covenant titled Restrictions on Real Estate for this subdivision, and my parents' lot and record plat. I found the documents on the county recording website, and it says, "No building shall be erected, placed, or altered on any lot until the construction plans and specifications and a plan showing the location of the structure have been approved by the Architectural Control Committee as to the quality of workmanship and materials, harmony of external design with existing structures, and as to location with respect to topography and finished grade elevation." So what would you do in these shoes? Is this fair? Let me know. HOA wanted me to replace a dead tree. My wife and I purchased a house in a neighborhood that had mostly retired families. There were several other families in the area that had kids, but for the most part, it was older folks. We bought our house the day before Thanksgiving and moved in overnight and into the morning. The following Monday, I received a letter from the HOA that I had a dead tree in my front yard and I needed to have it replaced. There was a rule that we needed to have 2 trees, one in the back and one in the front yard. So I contacted them and I said, hey, there was no way I was going to plant a brand new tree that would die immediately and that the ground was too hard. We live in northern Colorado. I told them that I would replace it the following spring, and they agreed that that would be okay. The following spring, on the official first day, they sent me another letter saying that I needed to replace the tree. I again told them that the ground was too cold and hard to replace a tree, and I didn't want to spend money on a tree that would immediately die. After several exchanges and a phone call to a local nursery, they agreed that I could wait a little longer. Now driving into the neighborhood, there is a division between entering and exiting the neighborhood. This is the HOA property, and they had a good-sized tree there. The tree had died and was in view of the main road and everyone entering into the neighborhood. I finally got a fine in the mail about my dead tree. I refused to pay that fine, and I told them when they got rid of their dead tree, I would remove mine. They pushed back and said that, as a homeowner, they could fine me, and I needed to follow the community guidelines. I continued to refuse to pay the fine and had a friend who was a lawyer contact them. They agreed to remove the fines and still said that I needed to follow the guidelines. After a few weeks, when I was driving into the neighborhood, I saw their tree had been cut down. When I got home, I got my axe and I chopped down my dead tree. I replaced the tree soon after. After this whole incident, someone from the HOA would walk by my house and measure my grass and would constantly harass me. This was one of the several issues that I had with that HOA. Luckily, with a new kiddo on the way, we moved to another town into a larger house. I had a coworker who lived a few houses down from me, and she said that they started harassing her too about her grass being too long. She worked nights at a hospital and would sleep during the day. She moved out of the neighborhood shortly after I did as well. This commenter said they would have cut down the dead tree, used it for firewood in the winter, and then got a fake tree off Amazon and planted it. Oh, it says here, our rules about trees never mention if they have to be real or not. Would have you done that too? Let me know. I'm part of an HOA, and management is refusing to review security footage to see who destroyed my Halloween decor. I live in Chicago, Illinois, and I moved into a condo with an HOA back in June. Nothing egregious has happened so far, until now. I pay my dues and keep my head down, and I say hi to the neighbors when I pass them in the halls, but I rarely see other people in this building. A couple of weeks ago, I put up Halloween decor on my door. It's just 3 things that stick only to my door: a pair of monster eyes, cobwebs, and a string of battery-operated copper LEDs. None of it sticks out into the hallway or anything like that. I put them up in early September, and there were no issues for the longest time. Yesterday, October 5th, I came home around noon after spending the previous night at my boyfriend's. Door decorations were all still intact. My boyfriend then comes to my place at 7 p.m. the same day and showed me that my lights are missing. Everything else on my door was still intact. My monster eyes and cobwebs were still on my door, only the lights were missing. My setup was that the batteries with the on and the off switch were taped to the inside of my door, and the lights extended to the outside of the door from within, meaning a small portion of the lights is between the door and the door frame. My thinking was that someone cut the lights purposely with wire cutters because these were copper LED lights and rather difficult to snap by hand. However, my boyfriend did show me that it's also possible that the copper string snapped after repeated assault by bending it back and forth, and that it was possible that the portion that sticks out of the door frame was repeatedly assaulted by my door and door frame, causing it to snap. However, I argued that even if it did snap on its own, the lights still hung on the cobwebs, so theoretically, the rest of the lights should still be on my door, just unblinking because the wire connection was broken, but the lights are just all gone. My condo unit has a security camera directly in front of it, so I reached out to my building manager to ask him to review the tapes during the time frame that it might have happened, which was October the 5th from 12 noon to 7 p.m. And I was told that they only review tapes if it affected the association as a whole. So basically, I'm boned because I'm only part of the association. It's so upsetting because I never got any complaints about my Halloween decor. I want to know what happened and if it was purposeful destruction, and I want to know what options I have against the perpetrator. But that's not even possible without security footage review. I'm going to take down the rest of my decor so that it doesn't get further damaged. The lights aren't very expensive, so the loss itself isn't the problem. It's the fact that I have to live in the same building with someone who might have purposely done this that really bothers me. It's just so pointlessly hostile. This says that vandalism is a crime and that the HOA could have a legal obligation to review the footage or the security. What would have you done? Ex-roommate was so very dumb. This was around 2000 or so. I was living in a pretty sweet 2-bedroom apartment right above where I was working at the time. My sister's boyfriend had recently moved to town and needed a place to stay. We were already kind of friends, so I gave him a bedroom. Rent was split, but it was still my place overall. He had a pretty annoying habit of making food, then eating it in his room and leaving all the dirty dishes in there. I bugged him about it for a while until he finally started at least putting him in the sink, still dirty but at least accessible. Eventually, I got pretty mad about this and basically told him to clean the freaking dishes. His reply, "That's not happening." Okay then. For the whole time he'd been living there, he was allowed to use my computer. It's a pretty beastly gaming rig I built to check his emails and crap like that. After he said that garbage about the dishes, I had a little idea. When he left for work that day, I hopped on the internet and found a free tiny program called BootLocker. It basically locked the computer with a black screen with a password prompt. No password, no computer. It even had an option to lock the BIOS, so if the PC was rebooted, it would ask for the password before even booting. There was also an option to include some words below the password prompt. I chose clean dishes equals checked email. Then I went about my day. Needless to say, when I got home later, he finished work and was there before me. The dishes were clean, but he was not happy. Poor little baby. Cue his revenge. He had a pretty fancy Sony TV that was in the living room. I had it hooked up to the computer so movies could be watched, games could be played, and so on the sweet big screen. 32 inches was way bigger than my monitor. Plus, we had free cable from work downstairs. After the bootlocker thing, he thought he would get me back by activating the parental controls on his TV. I get home after work, he's not home, and I go to watch some TV. No go without the 4-digit code. Took me roughly 2 minutes online to find what do I do if I forgot my Sony TV code. The look on his face when he got home and I was watching TV was freaking golden. He moved out not too long afterwards. I mean, this is funny because you get the guy who's not pulling his weight with the rent and whatever else probably, and then you're like, hey, just clean this up, simple job. And he's like, no, and then he tries to get you back and you get him. What would have you done? Awesome story. HOA tows my company car from my private garage with updates. Click the video on your screen so you find out what happens to that HOA, and I'll see you there.